Okay. Hello, guys, and welcome to my YouTube show. So, today I am going to talk about what was the better life in the former Soviet Union or the United States. So, that's this topic's video of today I'm going to make. So, I'm going to talk about it in this video, in this history video of USSR. So, if for some of you guys who don't know me, I am Ruben and I was born in the United States in New Jersey in 2002 on October 29th, 2002. I was born in New Jersey. So that was 17 years ago. I was born in New Jersey to my mom and father or grandfather. I don't know about what was life like in Soviet Union because I wasn't born there, but some of my relatives were from the former USSR. So I can't compare what was life like in Soviet Union and the United States because I was not from there, but I was born in the United States, so I can't compare life to Soviet Union and the United States. So if so for some of you guys who don't know, I was born in Jersey, and some of my relatives came from that country, and so I was the only one in the family that was born in United States of America, in the United States, and so I lived in the U.S. for about 17 years. 17 years of my life, I was in the United States of America, and so I was on this planet I'm on this planet for 17 years. And compared to life in Soviet Union, you didn't have any rights or anything like that because you didn't have the right to leave the country without government permission. So that was kind of the government was kind of strict on people because they didn't want people to leave because they were like the property of the country. The people of the nation were like slaves because they didn't want them to leave the nation because they were a part of the Eastern Bloc countries. So that's why USSR did not wanted its people to leave the country. They were basically like slaves. They didn't have any rights because they didn't have any right to vote or to and there was no electricity for some time after USSR dissolved. So that was kind of like a crappy life to live in Soviet Union. And then also, I think it was sometime between sometimes whenever there was no water or anything like that, they would have to get water from a fountain from somewhere. And they had to get water from a fountain and they had to bring it from into a bucket or something, and that was kind of like kind of a crappy life to live in Soviet Union. So yeah, you had to bring a bucket of water. You had to bring a bucket of water, and you had to put it in the fountain so you could drink water from there. And so that's what life was like in Soviet Union if you wanted to get water from the fountain. And in the supermarkets, I mean, there was food sometimes on the supermarkets, but sometimes there would be no food on the supermarkets. Like during during the late 70s to early 80s, that was when the corruption in Soviet Union started taking place, and that was when the television all over Soviet Union, all over the nation, was basically saying that there's food, there's a lot of stuff on the shelves, basically, and so that was a lie. The media of Soviet Union was lying to the people. In reality, there was no food, but they were basically lying to the people of the country. So you see, when the government has control of mass media, they would just lie to the people. They just want the people to believe that, basically. They want them to think that when the communist government has control over media. And so that's why they wanted people to believe it. And so compared to the United States is much more freedom because you have the right to vote, and you could to choose the way you want to live, compared to Soviet Union. And then also you have the right to vote, and the average age to vote was around is 18. So that's the average age. That's the age you would vote at for the president of the United States. But in Soviet Union, you didn't have that right to vote, because there would be these guys in the Central Committee, which was which were the people who were responsible for electing the Politburo, and they were responsible for electing the Soviet leaders, or the Soviet General Secretary of the Communist Party of USSR. And so it was much different compared to United States than compared to United States, yeah. And so, but then Soviet Union was a big country. I think its population was over 27 million people in Soviet Union, because it was a big country. It had a lot of territory. It had a lot of republics. It was over 15 republics. That was Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Lithuania, Moldova, Estonia, Latvia, Ukraine, Belarus, and others, and other nations. And so it was, and then United States is it's much smaller than it is to Soviet. It's much smaller than it was to Soviet Union. And so compared to North Korea, North Korea is much smaller than Soviet Union, because I mean North Korean population is very small. And then China is the largest country I think it's before Russia, but China is a huge country. That is a huge country, and it's a country in the Asia, and it was also located between the borders of Soviet Union during that time. And so United States is much better to live, because there's a bunch of stuff on the shelves in the supermarkets in the United States, and it's much better compared to much better compared to Soviet Union was. And so but then in Soviet Union, it was a communist system in which everybody was living like slaves. Because if you were living in a communist country, you were basically a slave of the nation, because you didn't have any rights. You didn't have the rights to do anything, like to vote or whatever. And at work, you would get, and if you didn't show up to work without any good reason, like an excuse or something like that, you would get arrested and you would be thrown into jail. But then in the United States, they don't do that, because if you miss a day off, if you miss a day from work, that's fine. But then in Soviet Union, it was not allowed. You had to go to work to make money, to take care of your family or something. And so life was pretty crappy in Soviet Union, but then life in the United States is pretty decent, because there's a bunch of food on the shelves compared to there was in Soviet Union. But then I remember there was this and then I remember in the Russia there was this in Russia there was no religion. In the Soviet Russia there was no religion, because it was an atheist country. Atheist is people who do not believe in religion. And so Soviet Union started to make religion illegal, because the religion of the Russian Empire was the Tsarist. It was the Russian religion that was under the Tsar. And so Soviet Union banned religion, because that was the religion of the Tsar, or the Tsar. and so that's why they made a religion illegal. And so during the Stalin time, that was when Stalin started attacking a bunch of churches, started burning churches to the ground during that time. And then during Khrushchev rule from 1953 to 1964, that was when Khrushchev started closing down or just closing down a bunch of churches in the nation. Because he attacked religion. He criticized religion at the 21st Congress Party meeting, which was in 1958, which was 60 years ago. And so, but then the United States is not an atheist country. It has churches throughout America, and so people could go to church, and they could go to church and say their prayers in the United States, and that's also much better than compared to it was in Soviet Union. And then Soviet Union, if you made fun of your leader, you would go to jail. If you made fun of your leader of the nation of Soviet Union, you would get arrested for making fun of them. You would get sentenced to jail. But in America, when you make fun of the president, it's not illegal. When you make an anecdote about a president of the United States, you would not get arrested because the government's not strict on people in the United States, and so they don't arrest people who don't go to work, and so life. So life in the United States is much decent than it was in the USSR, because shortly after the collapse of the USSR in 1991, that was when there was no power in Armenia. The reason why there was no power in Armenia was because the communist government of USSR told the government to take power away from Armenia. And so there was no power in Armenia for a long, long time. And that's what happened after it came down. And I think Armenia was the only republic to have that had no power. That was one of the former Soviet republics. That was the only republic that had no powers. The other Soviet republics like Belarusia, Ukraine, Moldova, and Russia, they had power. They had electricity during that period. And so that was kind of like the crappy life in USSR. It was not decent. But as I said, life in the United States is much better because there's a lot of freedom, and you have the right to do whatever you want. You have the right to choose the way you want to live and what you want to do. And so that's much better in the United States. That life is much better in the United States. But during World War II, the United States and Soviet Union, they were allies because they fought against the Germans. And by the end of World War II, they were allies. But then when the Cold War started, Soviet Union and United States became enemies. And that was when the world was on the brink of nuclear war. They were on the fear of nuclear war because that was when the United States and Soviet Union, or present-day Russia, was threatening to nuke each other. They were planning to send nukes over to the United States and Soviet Union. But then 40 years later, the Cold War ended, and then the United States remains the only superpower to this day still. So I hope you enjoyed this video, so please drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video, history video.